This is Michael Woodward, and this is episode 74 of the Jumblethink podcast.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Jumblethink podcast, a podcast focused on telling the stories of dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers. Along the way, we give you some tips and ideas of how you can chase your own big idea and dream and create the world you want to live in. Our guest on today's episode is Christos Shepherd. More about Christos in a second. On Monday, we have our special Columbus Day episode. It's going to be a lot of fun, so you're going to want to make sure to check out that episode this Monday. Do you have a big idea or dream and you simply don't know where to start? We are here to help you. Not only is Jumblethink a podcast, but we also offer consulting services to help you along your journey of chasing that big idea and dream. It's easy to reach out. Simply drop us an email, hello@jumblethink.com. We can't wait to start the conversation with you. Now let's jump into today's episode. I am super excited about today's guest. His name is Christos Shepherd. He is the co-founder of Campfire. It's this really cool audio app that's a little bit like Quora, but it allows people to ask direct questions of other people. I think you're really going to enjoy learning more about that app. Christos also started an airline called Thalassa, and he sold it. He's worked with governments and entrepreneurs in Africa starting their airlines. He's also worked with JetBlue launching Mint, America's first ever lay-flat experience. He has also fronted his own TV show in China, written for The Economist, and had appearances on the BBC World Service, CNN, Financial Times, The Economist, and so many other great media outlets. Let's dive into today's conversation with Christos Shepherd. Christos, how are you doing?
I'm very well this morning. Thanks so much for having me on the show. I'm thrilled to be here.
I'm really excited about what you're creating. It sounds super cool. But before we dive into that, how does someone start an airline? Because that's part of your story, and that's pretty impressive.
You start an airline with considerable difficulty, I suppose.
Okay.
It's not an easy game at all. However, I think in my case, I didn't really have any expertise in aviation whatsoever. I'd just come out of undergrad when I started Thalassa, and I was a history major, so I had no background whatsoever in aviation or engineering or anything of the sort. Didn't know how to fly a plane, and because of that, I went in very much with my eyes open and recruited people or persuaded a team of people to come and join me. And it was those people much older, wiser, and more experienced than I was, who really drove that airline forward and helped me to get it off the ground. I was very fortunate, actually, that I didn't have that aviation background in many ways, because it meant that I learned this important lesson that for almost every entrepreneur, you need to rely on other people if you're going to succeed. It sounds like an aphorism that you learn in an airport business book or something.
Yeah.
But no man is an island. Everybody depends on their team. People are the most important thing in business. All of those things are true. And if it hadn't been for my team, there's no way I would have been able to get that airline off the ground. I think, by the way, for anybody out there who wants to start an airline, if you're crazy enough to do so, there's no way any one person can know about revenue management as much as they know about, fleet ops, as much as they know about system ops, as much as they know about engine maintenance and all of these things. It's not possible for one person to know about all of these different things. And you need to know all of these different things in order to start an airline, which means, therefore, of course, you need a team of experts to come and join you on your madcap adventure.
Well, you used a really significant word in your description of what you started, and that's persuasion. You persuaded others who had the experience, who had the knowledge in those specialized areas to come on and be a part of a team. How is persuasion a significant part of being an entrepreneur?
It was huge. I mean, everything that you do is persuasion. I mean, first you've got to persuade yourself, right, that this is a clever thing, this is worth giving up, worth sacrificing for. You're going to be poor for a while. Then you've got to persuade somebody else to go and give you money, which is one of the hardest things in the world to do.
Yeah.
To persuade somebody to open their wallet and give you what's inside. And then, of course, you have to persuade your customers at the end of the day. You have to persuade people to actually purchase your product or service. All three of those things are extremely, extremely difficult things to do. However, there are things that I think help me, and I think help other entrepreneurs that I know when they go about persuading others. The most important thing I try to remember is, how would I like to be persuaded?
Yeah.
It's something that we often forget. I think every time I turn on the TV, every time I'm in a store, every time I go to the movie theater, wherever it happens to be, people are trying to persuade me to buy things. And I have to think to myself quite consciously, because, when you walk around the streets, you don't really tend to notice that these advertisements, this marketing, this persuasion is going on around you. But you've got to think quite consciously, which of these advertisements that I'm seeing, which of these approaches are working for me? Which of them persuade me personally as a private citizen, as a private individual? And then try and replicate, those successful approaches when you yourself go out to try and persuade others. For me, what often persuades me are stories. When people tell me stories about products or about things that I might need to buy, or contextualize those products, that really tends to help me with my purchasing decisions, with my investment decisions too. And so, I try to do the same thing when I go and persuade other people.
It sounds like you have a skill set that I think a lot of people miss in being an entrepreneur, being that dreamer, having that big idea, and that's the importance of observation. You just mentioned there, you're seeing what others are doing and how they're communicating. As you look around the world, as you look at other people who are creating things, what's maybe one of the biggest lessons that you've learned through observation that's just impacted your journey as an entrepreneur?
Oh, that's a great question. At the risk of repeating myself before, I think it would be the importance of people.
Okay.
I am very fortunate to know a whole bunch of different entrepreneurs in many different fields. And I know them as friends, so I know their weaknesses. I know that in some cases they can be quite idiotic, they can be selfish, they can make stupid decisions. But in almost every case, they have surrounded themselves, with people, to be honest, who are smarter than they are, which means, that they can exfoliate away some of those sharper edges, some of those weaknesses. I can't name any names, of course, but I just, in my head right now, I'm just thinking about 3 or 4 different people I know who have wildly successful businesses right now, that run the gamut from healthcare to financial services. And, while in their own way, each of those entrepreneurs is definitely very smart and very well educated and worldly, if it wasn't for their respective teams, I don't think they'd be anywhere close to where they are today. You gotta plug the gaps in your own knowledge, which are significant. It doesn't matter how clever you are. You got to plug those gaps by bringing on a team of people to help.
Yeah, I've worked as a solopreneur, and I've worked as running a team of 12 people for our web dev company that we own, web development company. And it always amazes me, even the people that I bring in that are newer to the field or something like that. When you find those right people, they bring something to the table that gives you a fresh perspective or keeps you in check when you're being stupid, in a decision you're making. And I completely agree with that. People and teams make the journey of entrepreneurship so much better.
Exactly.
Let's dive into what you're creating, because it's pretty unique. It's really cool. It's called Campfire. Tell us about it.
Wow. Where do I begin? I think Campfire is a mobile app for iOS. Android is coming soon. And Campfire is an audio-based platform where anybody, you, can ask your burning questions to your favorite experts, celebrities, podcast show hosts, the sorts of people that it's quite difficult normally to reach out to. And when you ask your question, they will answer you with directly recorded, personalized audio messages, which is cool. So if I'm a fan of yours, Michael, so I can ask you a question, and you can respond to me with a personal audio message, which is really nice. But here's the critical bit. The thing that I think really makes this so exciting is that if I ask really good questions, meaning questions that get other people to listen in to the answer, then I can get paid real money.
Wow.
So if I ask you a question, Michael, and it's a popular question that your other listeners want to eavesdrop on, that they want to listen into, then I get paid, as do you, by the way, but I get paid. And what does that mean, really? It means that I now have a financial incentive to ask you, Michael, good questions, questions that you're likely to answer. So there's no point in me trolling you because you're not going to respond to me. Well,
Right.
maybe you will, but I don't think that you will. And questions that other people want to listen to. So like good quality content that's higher quality at least than that which you see on some of the other social media networks today. So yeah, I have that financial incentive. And the other nice thing about Campfire is that you and I, in making money, can donate some or all of that money to whichever charities we respectively support. So at the moment I'm on Campfire, I am the questions that I answer help to raise money for Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane Irma relief, which is nice. I can actually use the power of my voice to do some social good. And I hope, Michael, later today you'll also download the app, and you too can get in on the spirit of things.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. First off, it sounds like it's kind of taking the best of Quora, where people contributively answer questions, making it on an audio platform like Anchor, and then adding in this financial portion of it. It sounds like there are some people doing stuff in similar veins, but this sounds like a new and fresh way to make the medium more engaging, make people come to the campfire and sit around and tell the stories, answer the questions, and go a little bit deeper in a way that isn't being done.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, that's entirely correct. And that's where the name Campfire really came from. Where do you go to share your own story and to listen to the stories of the people that you care about, in a quiet, intimate, and authentic sort of a setting? It's around a campfire. And, as you said, we are probably the first, at least the first social media organization anyway, that rewards all of its users financially, and which consciously places high quality content over the lowbrow nonsense that you see on some of the other social media platforms. Every Campfire user who answers a question gets paid, and every Campfire user who asks a question that other people listen into also gets paid. And that money, as I said, can be donated to good causes. It's a very simple model, really, at its heart. It's a revenue model that's been staring traditional media in the face for a decade.
Yeah.
But I think that we're among the first people to do it. And so I'm very excited. We launched only 3 weeks ago, so we're still in early days. But we already have a small community, a few thousand users, some of whom are making big bucks, by the way. Our most prolific user so far has earned herself $2,100 as of last night.
Wow.
In about the space of about 2 weeks. So and she's, just to be clear, that's an outlier, very much so. But it just goes to show the underlying power of what we're doing here. Is anybody can go on, share their expertise, their knowledge, their opinions, and their stories with the people who care about them the most, by the way, not just with the world at large, and make money by doing so.
Well, I want to dive into that a little bit more, because money's being paid out. How are you guys generating the revenue to enforce that? Are you putting ads into the questions? How does that work?
No, there's no ads. So
Wow.
people pay to ask questions, and people also pay to listen to answers on Campfire. So, for example, Michael, if I ask you a question, I have to pay a fee which you set.
Okay.
So your fee could be $1 or $10 or $100, depending on how popular you think you are and how much people are willing to pay. In my case, I don't know if my own mother would pay to ask me a question, so my price is only $1. But you understand the point. Here's the thing, though, like a lot of people get a bit deterred or scared by this whole pay mechanism, but asking people to pay to consume content does 3 really important things. I've touched on one of them, the first of them so far, which is that by putting up a paywall, even if it's a small paywall, you deter a lot of the trolls who stomp around Twitter and Instagram and these other social media networks. Now you actually have to pay to hurl abuse at somebody. That's quite a deterrent. The second thing is that by asking people to pay, we are able to reward the creators of the content. So we basically sell that content. And then when we do, we share those revenues with the people who created it. And that's important, I think, in a world today where, journalists are struggling to make money, musicians are struggling to make money, actors and actresses are struggling to make money because, content is basically just being given away for free everywhere you look.
Yeah.
It's time, I think, to reward people who are coming up with insightful and helpful content. And by the way, not only to reward the person actually making the content itself, but also the person who instigated it. In this sense, it's the person asking the question who also gets the reward. And then third and finally, I told you already that the one of the great things that we want to do with this platform is to use it to generate revenue for good causes.
Yeah.
Not just any old charities, but the causes that our users care about the most. We want to make social media do social good for the first time. And by being for charity, we necessarily have to be for pay. And so those, I would say, are the three main reasons why this revenue mechanism, this pay mechanism, really works for all users on the platform. Wait, no ads.
Yeah.
Do you see ads for the Campfire? I don't see ads at Campfire. I
No.
go to Campfire specifically not to see billboards. So
It's a really cool model and a different way to do it. And I love it when people are innovative about solving problems around, you look at the traditional media, news and print newspapers, and you look at new media, whether that's, ad clicks or Facebook ads or some such thing like that. And this is a innovative way to do it differently and approach a problem, content consumption, and the value of content in a fresh way. And so I guess the question I have for you based on that is how did this idea kind of percolate? Where did it start from? And how did you start going, hey, there's some legs here. Let's start walking this out and see where it leads us.
Wow. I think it was a whole bunch of different things that all came together at once. I am, I'm British, I'm now an American citizen actually, but I'm British really, and I was and still am very, very pro Brexit.
Yeah.
I think it's a terrific decision that the British people made last year, and I'm optimistic about the future for my sort of my homeland, my country. However, I come from a sort of a slice of society in the UK which is very, very anti-Brexit. And so last year when I was on Facebook and Twitter and all of these websites, I noticed like all of my friends were very much opposed to my way of thinking. And some of them actually threw vitriol my way. Like it was actually quite an upsetting time for me to be called a racist, to be called, a nationalist, to be told that I was somehow insane because I held an opposing political belief. And I noticed actually that the underlying reason for all of this, I think, was that social media creates these horrible echo chambers where everybody is encouraged to agree with one another about basically everything. And if you don't agree, you're immediately ostracized, you're cast out, and you're kind of, you're trolled, sometimes even by your people who you would consider to be your own friends.
Yeah. I
tell this story basically to say that social media is actually just a horrible place. And I'm not an old man. I'm not like, an old curmudgeon, but I remember, I grew up in a time long before social media. I grew up in a time before cell phones. And, honestly, I look at social media sometimes, I'm like, the world is going mad.
Yeah.
These are like the dying days of Rome. I mean, if social media is vacuous, it's puerile. You either have the experience that I just described over the Brexit thing last year, where people are just being horrible to you, or alternatively, you're on a platform like Instagram, where people aren't being horrible, but you're looking at literally the filtered versions of other people's lives. Everybody else has a better body than you, is on a nicer holiday than you, has a better looking girlfriend than you, and you're just like, my life is quite shit by comparison. So there's these things about social media that I just think make people feel bad about themselves. And I spent 2 years in Silicon Valley before my co-founder and I launched Campfire, and I saw all of this going on around us. I saw the fact that social media was not necessarily having a positive effect on the world. People scalping each other on Facebook Live, for God's sake. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Um, and more than that, to be honest, if I can continue riding on my high horse,
Absolutely, go for it.
um, when you're in Silicon Valley, you realize that the people there, despite being very well educated and worldly, um, are just coming up with these incremental innovations that just meet the needs of a tiny band of elite users. I was in LA the other day and I saw a billboard for an app that helps you to identify local spots in the neighborhood where you can take your dog to poo. And I was just like, this is crazy. It's like somebody has actually gone out, come up with this idea, persuaded, a venture capital fund to invest probably millions of dollars in this concept,
Right.
so they can afford to stick a massive billboard by the side of the 405 in LA. It's just insane. So long story short, I'm sorry because I rambled for a bit, but I found social media really disappointing. And I know my co-founder did as well, because it just makes you feel horrible. And you also look at Silicon Valley and think, wow, people are not really doing much here to change the world. All they're doing is changing the lives of other people who are just like them, other, frankly, middle-aged white guys. So we wanted to do something a little bit different. Nick and I, my co-founder Nick and I, both have sort of a passion for education, particularly him. He actually has an amazing backstory. You should have had him on the show, in fact, because he started an education non-profit in North Korea, of all places.
Wow.
Where he was sponsoring North Korean kids to leave the country, and also bringing Fortune 500 business leaders into the country not in search of, but to do investment and things like that. Anyway, all of this combined meant, we were interested in Campfire as a way to spread knowledge, to disseminate information and education in a digestible way that rewarded both content creator and content recipient. And it was all of these different things that kind of came together as one to, made us come up with the concept, I suppose, and decide ultimately to run with it.
You started to dive into the world of social media on the broader sense. I want to go deeper into that. I've talked about this on our podcast quite a bit with different guests, but also on some one-off episodes where I just kind of shared some ideas. And it appears that social media is giving us this false sense of intimacy with each other without responsibility. It's giving us this place of like you said, hey, I'm not keeping up with the Joneses because I'm seeing it on Instagram and I'm not good enough, and on Facebook my ideas, if I don't agree with others, then my voice doesn't matter. There is this ripping of community and authenticity of being able to be honest with who you are and sharing your story. And I love that that's what you're doing with Campfire. You're allowing people to answer questions, but you're also allowing them to share their stories through those questions. How can, on the broader sense, outside of just Campfire, how can we start making a shift in the world of social media to do what you're doing and create social good? Or is it outside of our control, I guess?
Honestly, I think it is outside of our control. I don't think there's anything that I feel there's that quote from Nelson Mandela, which is like, oh, it only takes one person to change the world. Honestly, I don't think any one person or any group of people can really change social media, except for the people, I guess, who run the social media companies, who could change things if they wanted to, but it's not in their interest to do so because they make too much money. And I don't blame them, by the way, because if I was in their shoes, I'd probably do the same thing. It's just, social media is just it's a disappointing place. And we've seen the knock-on effects that it has had, not only in the US, but across, Western democracies too. You look at the, the presidential election last year and how divisive that was.
Yeah.
As I said, spent 2 years in Silicon Valley, and I now live in New York. I live a very coastal life. And I don't meet people who support Donald Trump. And I'm not friends on Facebook with people who support Donald Trump, because my friends on Facebook are people who, just like your friends on Facebook, I'm sure, Michael, are people who I have met in the real world, who live where I live, who went to the same schools I went to, who I've worked with in the same companies before. In other words, they're basically people who agree with what I think anyway. So I go on Facebook and I see people, the Brexit issue aside, which I mentioned before, a bit of an anomaly there, but in general, I go on Facebook and I interact with people and I see comments from people who already agree with what I think. And so if somebody in the real world comes along who disagrees with my outlook, I'm like, whoa, where did you come from? I've never seen or met anybody as crazy as to have political beliefs like you have.
Yeah.
And that's what happened in the presidential election. I have friends, intelligent, worldly, well-traveled friends, people who know where, Nebraska is. And they couldn't believe that Trump was elected. Like, I've never met a Trump supporter before. I don't know who these people are. Are they racists? Are they terrorists? It's like, who are they? And the truth is, I think maybe Brexit taught me this, is like, social media is a bubble. And I don't think, to answer your question, Michael, I don't think that any one person can break out of that bubble unless you go and just randomly befriend people on Facebook whom you don't know, who live elsewhere, which you're not going to do realistically. And they're probably quite hard to find because of the way the algorithm is set up on platforms like Facebook. You're not going to pierce the bubble. You're not going to pierce the echo chamber. So hopefully Campfire is going to be a way to help people to break that bubble. I mean, after all, one of the nice things about the pay mechanism is that ultimately it encourages you to have conversations with people that you don't already know. Because if you already know somebody, why would you pay to talk to them? So yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that Campfire is going to be the place where people can go to find out, to hear the real talk about the real issues outside of their own immediate sort of social circle, their own immediate worldview. It's very important.
Yeah, I think it is. For me, I grew up in central Pennsylvania. I worked in Houston and in Pensacola, Florida for a while. I lived on the West Coast just north of Silicon Valley. I have a lot of clients work in Silicon Valley for quite a few years in development sphere, have an office in Midtown Manhattan. So, and I've got family from St. Louis and from the upper Midwest of like South Dakota. And for me, I see all of these different conversations and I see these different segments of here is middle America, here are the coastal areas, here are the intellectuals, here are the, people that are out working the fields. And I hear the different voices. One of my closest friends is extreme liberal. And then I have great friends that are extreme conservatives. I just wish that we would be able to have more conversations instead of, flinging poo at each other if you want, and
sure, there's an app for flinging poo at people, but yeah.
If there isn't, there will be by the end of this week, I'm sure. And I love that, campfires are that equalization. I think of growing up, I think of going out hiking or camping, and there were people that I may not necessarily like that were, when I was in Boy Scouts, that were part of the troop, or when I'd go out on different trips with different people that I may not see eye to eye with. But around that centralized hub, that place in the wilderness, we were able to hear each other's voices and learn and grow and say, hey, I may not agree 100%, but at least I can hear you. And at least I can have the conversation and learn. And sometimes that's learned that, I still believe what I believe, but I can still like this person. I can still love this person. Or, hey, maybe my perspective's wrong. It needs to shift. And having that interaction. And I love that. One of the things you're doing is you're breaking down also barriers that we would normally face. We don't get access into the life of maybe celebrities or people that work in Hollywood or people that work that are authors best-selling authors. And this is giving the ability to equalize the different spheres, the different bubbles that we live into and have those conversations. What's your hope in that? What is it that you would like to see happen with removing those barriers and allowing conversations to happen?
Well, I mean, I would say two things. First of all, if I may put my cynical business hat on, the real purpose of introducing celebrities onto the Campfire platform is more to generate buzz about the platform than anything else.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, it may not be a place where Kim Kardashian hangs out. And I hope that we continue to onboard and introduce to Campfire celebrities who've acquired their celebrity status through thought leadership.
Yeah.
So to my mind, there's a difference between, I'm trying to think of somebody who's a celebrity thought leader. I don't know, like a Neil deGrasse Tyson, for example.
Yeah. And
who's a
Ashton
celebrity.
Kutcher, he's doing a lot of
Exactly,
stuff.
exactly. So
Yeah.
celebrities who kind of have something interesting to say, or at least I hope they have something interesting to say, as distinct from somebody who, all respect to Kim Kardashian, she's considerably richer and more attractive than I am. But it's not really intended to be a platform for vacuous conversation or for puerile behavior.
Yeah,
This is
what
the first
she's selling isn't exactly what you want to be selling.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but having said that, she may well have interesting things to say, and that brings me to my second point, actually, which is that I hope that celebrities on the platform continue to do what they're already doing, which is actually using Campfire to have conversations that they can't have anywhere else. Twitter's 140 characters, Instagram's all about the image. When they're on TV or whatever, they're very much on script and on brand and selling their product or whatever. Campfire is a place where actually they can talk about things that are true to them. Like I said, as if they were around a real campfire. I don't think they'd be talking about their latest film. One of our users on the platform, who is the star of a major YouTube channel, in fact, the second most subscribed English language YouTube channel in the world, is answering questions about depression. She's a comedian, by the way, so
Wow.
she's known for, and she's very funny. Some of her answers on Campfire are hilarious. Even I, a stiff upper-lipped, curmudgeonly Brit, giggle occasionally at the answers that she records. But somebody asked her the other day, it was like, "Hey, I'm suffering from depression, and I know that you suffered from the same when you were a teenager. So can you give me some advice?" So I'm paraphrasing the question, but it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
something
yeah.
like that. And she answered. It was one of the best questions that I've heard on Campfire so far, because it was so unexpected. You were expecting her to be zany and crazy and witty, like she is, when she's on screen on YouTube. That's her persona. But this is a place where she decided, no, I'm going to be real. I'm going to be who I really am. When I take off the makeup and the hair and the clothes, and I get home and I get into bed, like this is who I really am. And it was an extremely touching piece of audio. Again, a piece of audio which is open to anybody on the platform to listen to, which is wonderful.
You mentioned persona there. How do we, in this space or whether it's on the broader space, help people move past persona and start being honest with who they are, sharing their real selves? Because I think that a lot of people have a lot more to offer than a persona.
They do. They really do. I mean, I don't know. Society nowadays is set up for people to maintain those personas. I mean, the most popular app, or one of the most popular media outlets in the entire world, is Instagram,
Yeah.
which deliberately, it basically says to you, mate, you better have a persona because your real self is not good enough for public consumption.
Yeah.
Is basically what Instagram says to everybody. Um, here's a filter. Make sure you smize. Follow me back. It's sad. I don't know if it's possible really for kids growing up nowadays. God, I sound like such an old man. The kids today. I'm 33 years old, and I didn't have this when I was growing up. I didn't have this certainly when I was pre-teen. Even when I was a teenager, the most I begged my parents to get me a mobile phone. The most I had was SMS, texting people. That was, you could make pretty pictures by punctuating your SMS messages you know what I'm talking
Oh, I
about.
do. I'm 3 years older than you, so I'm there.
Younger listeners won't know what we're talking about,
No,
but
not a clue.
yeah, there was a time before you could send images to people on your phone. Um, so yeah, I didn't have that pressure, and nor did many of the people who are my age or our age. And I think I wouldn't say we're all well-adjusted people, because there were other issues that we had to face too. But it was simpler, and I don't have kids yet, but when my wife and I do, I hope to bring them up with at least a little bit of the spirit of the 1990s, when life was considerably simpler,
Yeah.
and you didn't constantly have to post, your waif-like waste on social media so that it could garner you enough likes so you could get through the day and feel happy about it.
Yeah. I recently heard a statistic. When I was living out in California, I was living in a town called Chico, which has Chico State. Back in the 80s and 90s, it was one of Playboy's top party schools of the country. And so
Nice.
Crazy town, beautiful town, very, very, farmer meets ultra liberal elite, and it was this community in the middle of the almond orchard. They call them almonds out there. It's a long story, but and citrus and all of these different rice type crops. And so there was this diversity of community. But what shocked me was that the majority of students were on antidepressants at the college.
Yeah.
That's sad.
Yeah. It is. I mean, I can't really comment about that sort of thing. I've got in trouble before because, of course, it's who am I, who are you to tell other people which medication they should and shouldn't take and what they need and what they don't. But it's definitely a fact that use of antidepressants has increased dramatically over the course of the last decade or so. And when I was in school, likewise, same sort of thing that you're describing. Like, I would say a majority of the student body was taking something, some kind of, I don't know, just antidepressants, performance enhancements, whatever, just to get through. And that's just, I don't know. We shouldn't be relying on medication just to do what we should, just to live normally. I guess to live in a normal state. Now, granted, of course, some people, don't get me wrong, like some people need that medication, but I question whether or not, its use is more widespread than it needs to be.
Absolutely. You have started some great businesses. You're doing really crazy things. Some little side facts here. You had your own TV show in China.
Yeah.
That's craziness.
It was the best show I ever had. It was so fun. I was 18, so it was a long time ago, or 19, and they gave me a TV. I mean, basically it was like a sort of an urban magazine show almost. So it was like a review show where I went around Shanghai and I had to review restaurants and nightclubs and bars and things like that. So to be 19 years old, let loose in a city like Shanghai, going and eating free food in the best restaurants and going to nightclubs and being paid for it was just amazing. I've never had a better job than that before. I don't think I ever will. It was great.
That's really cool. You've had this just incredible life when it comes to experiences. And I guess the question that others may be asking is, how can they start creating awesome things like you have?
You've got to put yourself, at least for me anyway, I can only speak for myself. You need two ingredients. One, you got to be totally insane. You got to do things that are completely outlandish and actually do them. There are a lot of people who talk a big talk about, and I'm not saying these are your listeners, but I meet a lot of people who talk a big talk. They have business ideas, and they don't pursue them. And they often blame their failure to pursue those ideas on some external factor, like, oh, I have this great idea for a business, but I can't do it because I have a job. Well, I'm not saying you need to quit your job, but ring fence some of the salary that you're earning and put it towards bootstrapping your product or service, whatever it is that you've come up with. Bootstrap it. That means build an MVP, build a minimum viable product. It doesn't have to be the complete version of what it is that you're trying to build. Nobody, you don't build Rome in a day. Just start with the very basics.
Right.
Test it with users. Go and meet customers, not your friends and your family who are going to tell you nice things. Go out onto the streets, go to focus groups, go to conferences and events, and find out what people actually really think of your product or service. And if you get positive responses, well, if you don't get positive responses, keep iterating, keep changing. If you do get positive responses in the end, then you can go to an investor and raise money, at which point you can quit that horrible job and go and run with it. So, just do it, basically, to coin a phrase. Just go ahead and do it. Start small and do it. The second thing, which I think is equally important, if not maybe even more important, is to make sure that you put yourself in situations where you are likely to stumble across a lucky break.
Yeah.
Means you have to build your professional network. And I don't mean do it on LinkedIn. Sure, LinkedIn is important, but you got to meet people in real life. You got to have informational interviews. Have coffee with people, attend conferences, elbow your way to the front and meet the people, the keynote speakers and the panelists when you attend those conferences. That's how I think you get ahead in life. One of our shareholders, one of our partners at Campfire is, the world's most prolific talent manager, basically. And how did I get him to join Campfire? I did exactly what I just said. I went to a conference. It was free. And I elbowed my way to the front. It was really awkward, very embarrassing, of course. It's horrible, that experience of, trying to corner somebody after an event because they're going to leave. And, but I did it anyway because I thought, well, I'm here. I sat through this entire thing. I'm going to try. And, he gave me his phone number, his direct phone number, which astonished me.
Wow.
And he, I sent him an email later on that evening, and the following morning at about 7:30 a.m., I woke up, had a text. It said Campfire with a little fiery logo. Let's do it. And that was how it happened.
Wow.
So it's not that I was particularly clever or well connected. I'd never met this guy before in my life. It wasn't that, I was, okay, maybe I can persuade somebody quickly. But I deliberately put myself in a situation where I was likely to encounter somebody who could help me. And that is a really important thing for aspiring entrepreneurs to do. This doesn't just mean events and conferences. As I said, it means building your professional network too, but just go to the places where, people who can help you hang out and meet them, talk to them.
I think this is a good transition to our rapid fire questions. I think you may have actually just answered our first one.
Yes.
So you're 1 for 6 without even being asked. So, I mean, that's pretty impressive. Overachiever there, right? So the first question is, what is one step someone can take to start chasing their big idea and dream? I think maybe you answered that.
Yeah, I think I did. I'm gonna say I did.
Do you have any idea what the second question is? Let's see if you can get 2 for 2.
I have no idea.
Okay, all right.
You're gonna have to give me this one.
All right. What's one change in the world you'd like to see?
One change in the world I'd like to see. I'd like to see one change. I would like to see people being happier with themselves and inside themselves, because I think that when people are happy with themselves, they're nicer to others.
I think that's an incredibly good insight. What do you want your legacy to be?
Honestly, I hope that Campfire becomes a platform through which the world, and I do mean the world, not just America or the coasts of America, disseminate knowledge. I've spent a lot of time in places like sub-Saharan Africa. I've seen slums, basically, where people not only have no hope of meeting their idols or anybody particularly well educated or with any particular expertise, but they don't even meet people who've met people who've met people who've met their idols. And I want to make sure that we can put in front of a kid in a Nairobi slum or a Lagos slum in Makoko or wherever, the opportunity to interact with Hollywood celebrities, Harvard University admissions directors, Premier League soccer players, all of these people. That's what I hope my legacy is.
Who or what inspires you?
Who or what inspires me? I mean, in a very broad sense, I'm always inspired by rags to riches stories, I suppose. I really love the idea of people who hustle their way to success, who start out poor and make it big. Dhirubhai Ambani, is the founder of a massive, probably I think the biggest company in India. He's he passed away. A multi-billionaire. He started by pumping gas at a BP petrol station in Yemen. That's how he began.
Wow.
And he ended up being a billionaire. John Brown was, for some reason, the same company. I don't know why. John Brown also did the same thing. Lord Brown became the chairman of BP. Started out also pumping gas for BP. Apparently, pumping gas at BP is quite the way to go. So start there. But yeah, stories like those, they've always inspired me ever since I was a kid. Like, even just like, I don't know, I remember watching Aladdin, the Disney movie Aladdin. I was like, wow, you went from street rat to prince. Like, that's so cool. Those are the stories that inspire me. But it's no one particular person. It's just that kind of story arc in general I always like.
What are you reading, listening to, or watching?
I don't have time anymore. It's so sad. It's really, I don't have any time to read books. I started reading a book by Yanis Varoufakis, which is sort of like an inside account of the European Union's bailout or not of the Greek economy during the financial crisis.
Yeah.
But I stopped reading that several weeks ago. It is a great book, but I don't have the time. TV, gosh, I mean, I've watched Man United. That's my team. So I watch Manchester United soccer games, but that's pretty much it. My wife often forces me to watch Insecure and Being Mary Jane and shows like that, but I don't pay much attention. Movies, I used to watch movies, but I really haven't seen any. And this summer apparently has been the worst, the worst summer ever for Hollywood since like the 50s or something. So it's probably because all the films are basically about the same bloody superheroes over and over again. It's like, there's another Spider-Man movie I noticed this year. I was like, anyway, I can't even be bothered. But yeah, so I haven't really seen a film lately. So yeah.
Yeah. Now, I don't get to ask this question often. Actually, more than I probably think I do. In the background throughout the interview, you could hear the sirens of New York behind you. I have an office in Midtown Manhattan. New York is my favorite place in the world. If somebody's going to New York City, where do they need to stop?
Oh gosh, wow! And I'm not even a native New Yorker. So I've forgotten the name of the street, but it's somewhere down in the sort of West Village, Greenwich Village area. There's a restaurant, an Italian restaurant called Via Carote, which is wonderful. Sometimes there's a bit of a wait, but the food there is absolutely terrific. The service is great. And even though Italian food is not my favorite, it's just a wonderful place to be. When you finish there, though, what's really nice is that 2 or 3 doors down the street is a place called Arthur's Tavern.
Okay.
Where I think it's Tuesday nights. They have every week, they just have this band that just plays phenomenal live soul music. So they do covers, and it's kind of like Chaka Khan and Stevie Wonder and the Jackson 5 and stuff like that. And it's a wonderful New Yorky dive bar-ish, but not too dive bar-ish kind of atmosphere. It's wonderful. Great place.
It's really fun. Before we ask our final question, how can someone find or connect with Campfire or you?
Oh, that's a great question. My God, I didn't even do the sales spiel before. I'm a terrible, terrible entrepreneur. If you want to talk to me, you can definitely do it through Campfire. I answer every question that I receive as a point of principle. So if anybody has any questions about, entrepreneurship, how do you start an airline, or what I was doing in Africa or any of those things, you can do so. Just look my name up, Christos Shepherd, on the Campfire app. And to get the Campfire app, you just go on your iPhone to get.campfire.fm, or you can just search for Campfire in the App Store. Either way, you will find the Campfire app. It's a little orange microphone, and you can download and ask questions to me, ask questions to anybody else that's on there. And you can also answer questions of your own as well when you download the app, because everybody can ask and everybody can answer.
That's really great.
So you can make money.
I like that. What is one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
I want to have children. I really want to have kids. I think that's what I want. A lot.
That's awesome.
I'm getting broody now at the age of 33.
Well, I know that you've got an amazing journey ahead of you. You're going to be creating more stuff, I'm sure, for years to come that is just absolutely incredible. I'm downloading the app right now and looking forward to checking that out. Thanks for taking time out to share your story, what you've done, and the community you're creating.
Wonderful. It's been a pleasure to chat, Michael. I really, really enjoyed this, and I hopefully I'll be able to come back in a few years' time and reminisce about these early days. But I will, in the meantime, thanks very much for downloading the app. I will definitely be asking you some questions this afternoon, and your audience should as well. The listeners should definitely download Campfire and do the same thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for being on.
Thanks.
It has been so much fun having Christos on the show today. We'll have links to the app and more information about Campfire on the episode notes. Make sure to ask me some questions on Campfire. It's been a lot of fun. I think you'll enjoy it too. So swing on over there, get the app, and start asking those questions. On Monday, we're doing a very special Columbus Day episode. Make sure to tune into that this Monday. I want to encourage you, if you have a big idea and dream, go do something today to start chasing that, to start making it a reality. It's important that you live to the fullest, that you put yourself in those positions to take the risks, to take the steps, and move forward into a destiny that's unwritten. Only you have the power to write a destiny, a future, to change your world. Thanks again for tuning in. Now go out there and do something incredible.
Vous êtes une autre personne. Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps. Vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.